start this project out, I made some sketches, but then I ended up just kind of winging everything except the base size. I chose the size of the base to make it about 25mm scale, which is used for a lot of tabletop games. I cut out a base from 1/2" XPS foam that was slightly smaller than the finished base will be. This will give me an extra bit of room for LEDs or just building out the right shape of the shrine. And I cut out a nice circle to give access to the battery or LEDs or whatever else I want access to once this thing's built. I said circle. Weren't you listening? What even is that? I cut a piece of cardboard out to the size of the finished base to give me something to connect the LED diffusing plastic to later. I also chopped a yogurt container into rough shape and then just hot glued everything in place. At this point, I had the basic structure and no idea how to make this thing light up. So I turned my brain off and just did stuff. Tested LEDs to make sure they would work and then just kind of wrapped them around the yogurt container and the entire base. Tested out some plastic milk jug pieces to see how well they diffuse light. Not great, but hopefully a layer of white spray paint will fix that. I hot glued the plastic pieces in place where I wanted the LEDs to shine through. The pieces were kind of wonky shaped and I ended up running out, so I just focused on giving a similar feel to the in-game shrine rather than going for an exact replica. A few times the pieces weren't quite where I wanted them, so pulling on the plastic ended up peeling some of the spray paint off because that's what the glue was stuck to. Anyway, this is looking pretty ugly, but at least it can't get any worse than this, right? Right? I mixed up a batch of sawdust oatmeal. I used this to fill in various gaps between the plastic with some wads of paper and strips of cardboard to help fill in the bigger areas. We let that dry overnight until it was the color of well-done oatmeal cookies. Rock-hard oatmeal cookies that stab you when they touch them. Yeah, oatmeal cookies look a lot less appetizing growing out from between chunks of plastic, but I think now we finally reached the low point of this project. I mixed up a batch of salt dough for my main modeling needs. Slathered the salt dough over the bumpy nastiness of the oatmeal, then I went back with thin sheets and covered the plastic surfaces. I used a clay tool to carve in the designs. For the front of the shrine with the Sheikah symbol, I copied it as precisely as I could, but there wasn't room for the constellation-y bits, so I skipped those. For the rest of the constellation thingies, I made the designs fit to where the plastic was so they would light up properly, and it's too much work to try to keep all these things identical to the game. Also, I don't know why I call these things constellations, but that's what they remind me of, so that's what I'm going with. That was time to add the swirly rock designs. I rolled worms from the salt dough and smushed them onto the shrine. The worms didn't want to stick to the dry salt dough or to the plastic, so I tried to keep them connected to each other as much as possible, which helped make it look a bit better. In some cases, though, I did moisten the dry salt dough to give a few more attachment points. Occasionally, a few wild salt dough worms made their way into the shrine. I left them alone until they were in a nice position, and then smashed them in place. Once I'd done, all that remains is to slowly spin it, and then voila! The rest of the worms all appear. After waiting 2 days, it was mostly dry, so I went ahead with the paint. Hopefully it won't turn all moldy and nasty in a month because of the moisture still there. Anyway, I started out with black paint. Originally I tried paint around the worms, but as time went on I cared less and less about keeping them paint free. I didn't try to paint them though. Painting was taking quite a while, so I went back to this new trusty method of spinning. There we go. The shrine is really taking shape at this point, although the black paint did highlight the areas that got missed and the rather messy nature of the salt dough clay. And now it's time to paint all those wormies. We'll just give her another twist, and there we go. Don't look too closely though, some of them might have white bellies. And also, I wasn't a huge fan of this color initially, but as I painted, I liked it better and better. Possibly because my brain knew if I didn't like it, I'd have to redo all the painting. After finishing up the painting, I had to reattach a couple worm bits. Plastic is fairly flexible, which makes it easy to crack a worm off the smooth plastic. If I make something like this again, I would definitely try to find a more durable air-dry clay. I cut cardboard pieces for the Sheikah symbol's eye, since the original clay bits had fallen off, and then hot glued them in place. I also cut a piece of cardboard for the door. This was pretty difficult to get in place, and there is a pretty giant gap on one side, but it's be kind of a pain to fill at this point with worms jumping off left and right, so I just left it alone. Carefully painted on the circle dealio on the ground in front of the door. I tried match it to the game, but then after a mistake, I decided to just give it a similar vibe. I don't even know why I tried matching them, honestly, after how the project had been going. Nothing is very identical to the in-game, so what's one more design? Painted the door to match the dark brown sections, and then painted on some squarish characters that are reminiscent of the symbols in the game. In hindsight, it might have worked better to print off an image and use that instead of hand painting, but it looks alright. Then after giving it a lovely matte clear coat, it was finished. You may have noticed that the pedestal where Link puts his Sheikah slate in is missing. I periodically remembered and forgot about this thing throughout the project, and I did start making the pedestal, but as I was approaching the end, I realized it was about twice as big as it should have been, so I decided just to skip it. It's not like the rest of it's perfect. Thank you for watching. With that, I'll see you in the future.